Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the education section. So in this video today I'm going to touch on managing and preventing sickness and basically what to do when you become unwell. Because obviously it's something that everyone faces from time to time, so this video is basically going to help you kind of manage it as best as possible, give you the understanding of what you should do with training, nutrition, and help you get back to kind of peak health as soon as possible. So, episode overview, just basically how to handle training, how to handle nutrition, how to get back to full health as soon as possible, as I touched on, and how you can prevent basically being sick in the future. So, first of all, we're going to touch on the training side of things. So, whether you should train or not is dependent on the type of illness you have, if you feel like you can actually have a productive session or not, because when it comes to training, our goal is not to just get in the gym, it's not a tick box exercise, we're trying to intentionally progress our lifts, or sometimes when dieting, retain our lifts, but that's what we want to make sure we're doing, so it's not just about kind of getting in the gym. And if, let's say, we can't have a productive session and it's just going to make us maybe worse or stop us getting better, then sometimes it's better just to simply rest. And like, if it will worsen your symptoms and stop you getting better and prevent you basically getting back to full health, then sometimes it's better just not training at all. So there's obviously, like, when it comes to kind of training, you'll know better than myself if you feel fit to train. So it's kind of your call in regards to if you can train or not. But what I'd say is, if you think you can scrape by, if you still think you can get in the gym and get some productive work in, then what you can potentially do is perform a devolume session. So a devolume session is like a form of deloading, hence the word D at the start of it, and then volume. So you're basically deloading by reducing volume, or in other words, the amount of sets you're doing in the session you're performing. So what this basically looks like is performing one set per exercise, performing no 50-50 reps, so reps that you feel like you might not achieve, and not taking any forced reps, so reps when, let's say, a spotter helps you get the rep up, or you use your own assistance to help get the rep up. Basically, no reps past failure, you could say. And like I said, this is just a form of deloading, and the thought process here is the more sets we do, the more fatigue will accumulate. And when we're unwell, we don't want to accumulate fatigue. We want to do the opposite. We want to drop fatigue, because that's just going to make us worse or stop us getting better. And same with like doing no forced reps or 50-50 reps we might not get, or reps to failure or past failure, because the reps basically approaching failure are going to be super fatiguing, again stopping us from getting better faster. So why devolume? Why basically do a devolume session? It can help us scrape by, still taking some progressions in our training, still kind of chip away and remain efficient at the movement patterns, or in other words, remain used to doing those certain movements. As if we do just, let's say, not train at all, what that can potentially mean is when we get back to training, movements can feel foreign, or in other words, quite unfamiliar, and it can be hard to maybe retain strength when we get back to training, and it will just set us back, if that makes sense. So basically, it allows you to still recover and drop fatigue while still chipping away in the gym, still able to make some progressions, or at least retain where you're currently at. Because sometimes, like, if let's say you're in a dieting phase and you feel like, right, I've got a cold, it's not too severe, but I'm probably not fit to train at 100%, this is something you could potentially do. And like I said, you'll know better than myself if you can get away with doing like a devolume session, or if you need complete rest. So it's your call in that regard. And this is something you'll get better at over time. Some people say, right, if you're unwell, you shouldn't train at all. However, I don't think it's as black and white as that, because there's a difference between having like a minor head cold and then having, let's say, really extreme food poisoning, or having like an extreme illness of some sort. They're not the same. So having the same blanket statement of you shouldn't train at all, you shouldn't get in the gym at all, I don't think's the right advice, in my opinion. And like I said, this is something you'll get better at knowing over time as you become more experienced. For example, if, let's say, you try and do like a devolume session, it makes you a lot worse, you feel horrendous after it, you're ill for longer, you know that probably wasn't a smart approach. However, I've been slightly unwell in the past, I've done devolume sessions and I've managed to kind of get better and still kind of chip away and at least maintain where I'm currently at in the gym. So it's your call and your judgment in terms of, do you think you can at least chip away and do something in the gym? And I'm not saying train through an illness or not listen to your body or not maybe not take care of yourself in that regard, but it's just something you could potentially still do and still kind of chip away with if you aren't feeling amazing. And if, let's say, you're in the position where you're just really not fit to train, you need to take time off and you need to rest, then do so. Because let's say you are really unwell and you just keep training at 100% through it, what's going to happen is you're just going to make yourself ill for longer. You're going to make yourself not be able to train at 100% for longer. So if you feel like you really can't train, then that's fine. What I'd recommend you do is just rest until you've been better for a full day. For example, if let's say you fell ill on the Monday, Wednesday you didn't feel quite 100%, Thursday you felt 100%, you were like, right, I think I can train. The full Thursday you felt perfectly fine, then what I'd say is go in on the Friday and then try and return to training. And when you return to training, most of the time it's a good idea to perform a devolume session. Basically, like I just touched on, a session where you're only doing one working set per exercise, nothing past failure, no reps that you're not confident that you'll definitely get. And then from there, what you can basically do is then assess the day after if you're still feeling good, if maybe you've not made yourself worse or made yourself ill again, then return the next session to full volume. And then from there, just get back into things. What we don't want to do is, if let's say you've been unwell or you've been off, we don't want to go back and try and compensate by skipping rest days, doing more reps, or doing more sets, or doing more activity outside the gym, or just trying to compensate in any form. Because what we've basically done there is, sometimes you can be unwell just because you're fatigued from training. Sometimes when you're in a fatigued state, that makes you unwell. So if we go back and we try and batter ourselves, we try and compensate, and we try and do a lot more, then we can just make ourselves unwell again. So don't try and play catch up, just resume from when you left off and get back into your usual training routine. And then, like I said, if you are fine after doing the devolume session, if you feel like, right, I'm all good, my training went well, I didn't make myself worse, I'm still feeling great, then the session after, return to full volume if the illness doesn't kind of reoccur or get worse or come back at all. And as for what you should do with the nutrition side of things, so if your digestion is okay, try and hit your rest day protein and calorie goals if you are basically not training, even if you're in a dieting phase. And what I mean by that is, don't think when you're dieting, I'm not training, so I'm going to eat even less. Because if, let's say, you're not training, you're not doing steps, and you're trying to still lose weight, then you are potentially risking muscle loss, which is obviously not ideal. We want to make sure we've got enough protein so we can retain muscle where we can retain where we're currently at. Because if we've not got the stimulus to hold on to muscle, or in other words, if we're not training and we're trying to purposely diet, then we're going to be putting ourselves in a position to lose muscle, which we don't want. So we want to make sure we've also got adequate fuel and nutrients to recover, which is another reason you shouldn't purposely try and lose weight and keep dieting when you're unwell. So what we basically want to do during this time is roughly be at maintenance calories. So if, let's say, you are currently dieting, I'd recommend trying to hit your rest day food, but just not really moving much, not getting much activity in, and just resting. And what that will probably do is put you at a calorie maintenance. So try and get your protein in still, try and get your calorie goal hit if your digestion permits. What I mean by that is, if you've got food poisoning or like a stomach bug and you can't eat, you really can't digest the food well, then putting more stress on your digestive system by still trying to hit your calorie goal, your protein goal, probably isn't a good idea. If you find your hunger's really low throughout, then you can adjust food choices to accommodate. So if your digestion is okay, but you've just got no hunger at all, then you can try and be smart with your food choices and think, right, I'm probably not going to be able to eat a ton of oats right now because they're super filling, my appetite's just not there. Then what you can do instead is, instead of having things like oats, could you potentially have some cereal? Could you potentially have like honey on something just to get the calories in? Could you have something plain like white rice with some honey on top, some dates, etc.? So could you have a bagel and a whey protein shake? So some form of liquid calories or something just to make sure we're getting some food in. Because what we don't want is we don't want to be unwell and struggling to kind of get better and also deficient in nutrients and deficient in adequate amount of calories to basically help us get better. So if you can, still try and hit your food goals and hit your protein. And something important is not having an all or nothing approach. So just because you can't train doesn't mean your habits and your actions don't matter during this period. So don't use it as an excuse to eat a lot of junk and go over your calorie goal or doing things like that. Like, you can still control things outside the gym. Even if you're unwell, that doesn't mean there's not things you can't control. So bear that in mind. And obviously, if the illness permits, still try and stay hydrated and get plenty of water in and also salt. Especially if, let's say, you've got like a stomach bug or etc., you'll be going to the bathroom a bit more, dehydrating yourself even further. So try and get some form of kind of hydration in and maybe some salt in or electrolytes if digestion permits once again. So, as for activity, so if you are up for it, if you feel like you can, and you're maybe just resting, maybe go for a wee walk here and there, try and get some morning sunlight to set us up for a good sleep at night, and maybe continue hitting your step goal. If you don't feel like you're up for it, then just have complete rest. Again, this is a circumstance where you want to listen to your body, and you'll know better than myself if you're up for doing some steps, if you're up for doing any activity at all, or if you feel absolutely horrific and you feel like you can't, then obviously don't. And as for like maximizing immune function, so what can we do to stop ourselves getting unwell and make us basically get better as soon as we possibly can? So with the diet side of things, having good variation when it comes to your protein sources. So if we're eating, let's say, chicken for every single meal, with, or for, let's say, every protein source we're getting is just from chicken, we're only getting, that's our only source of protein, then we're not getting a wide array of nutrients from our protein sources. Whereas if our protein sources contain, let's say, a lean beef, eggs, chicken, let's say we're getting salmon on some days, let's say we're getting maybe another fish source of some sort, Greek yogurt in our diet, etc., then we're getting a wide array of nutrients in our diet. So we're not putting all our eggs in one basket when it comes to where we're getting nutritious foods from. So try and have a variation in regards to your protein sources, not just when you're unwell, but all the time to prevent basically you becoming unwell. Because typically through different foods we get through different nutrients, so that's why we want good variation in our diet. And same with your fruit and vegetables. We ideally want to have good variety when it comes to what we're consuming, and we want to ideally hit your 5 a day or at least your 5 a day. I think a good place to be is having at least 200 grams of fruit and 200 grams of vegetables in our diet. And a good kind of rule to stand by is trying to get a lot of different colours and textures when it comes to fruits and vegetables. You don't need to overcomplicate it any further than that, in my opinion. Just having like a good bit of variation and making sure you're having at least 200 grams of each. And if you are in a dieting phase, this is also going to support good hunger management. And if you're in a gaining phase, this is going to support good digestion from getting fiber in your diet as well. And same applies with your carbohydrates. Try and get your carbohydrates from numerous sources. So things like fruits again, which will obviously play a part in your 5 a day. And having like different sources, so things like oats, rice, etc. Plenty of grains, so we're not just getting, let's say, all our carbohydrates from the one source, because again, we're limiting how much nutrients we can get in our diet from not having good variation when it comes to our sources we are currently consuming. And also same applies with your fat sources, so try and get your fats from different sources of foods. If that's some meats, if that's eggs, if that's almond butter, peanut butter, etc., just so we're again getting a wide array of nutrients in our diet. And also, if you have variation in your diet, it's going to be more enjoyable, it's going to be easier to stick to as well as that, and you're probably going to digest your food better than having a ton of just, let's say, the one food source for carbohydrates, fats, or your protein. And your base diet should always be full of nutritious foods. So when you're in a dieting phase, and well, regardless if you're in a dieting phase or gaining phase, we still want variation. We still want to get our 5 a day in. Just because your hunger's low when you're in a gaining phase isn't an excuse not to consume your 5 a day. It should always be something we're trying to make sure we're nailing. And your base diet, make sure you're planning in the nutritious foods first. What I mean by that is if you're in a dieting phase and your food's low, then what I recommend you do is, instead of, let's say, thinking about, right, for my breakfast, let's say you've had a food adjustment, you've had a food drop, and your current diet for breakfast is, let's say oats, berries, and let's say a whey protein powder. Then don't remove the berries from your diet if your carbohydrates get dropped. Instead, remove some oats, or if, let's say, you're having honey with that meal, remove the honey, but don't remove the foods that are nutritious. So our base diet should be the nutritious foods. So what I recommend you do is, with your meals, always have like a good protein source, a good fruit and vegetable source, and take the calories away from foods that aren't going to give us as much nutritional value. So taking away things like maybe white rice, things like maybe granola, for consuming granola, cereals, because they're probably going to have less nutrients in things like fruits and vegetables, etc. So our base diet should always be full of nutritious foods. Remove the ones that aren't giving you as much nutritional value first. And as for your sleep, so with our sleep plays an absolute massive role in our immune function. Not only that, our ability to progress our lifts, our digestion, our hunger. If you think about any aspect of your health and fitness goals, sleep's going to have like a having good sleep's going to have a positive aspect in it in some form, in some manner. So anything that improves your sleep will improve your immune function. So have a think, are you nailing everything that's going to improve your sleep? So are you making sure you've got a good duration, and have you got good quality of sleep? And there's tons of things we can do to capitalize on our sleep and make sure we're maximizing our sleep quality. I'm not going to touch on it in detail here, but if you want more information on sleep, have a look at the information pack that you have access to if you're one of my clients watching this. And as well as that, have a look at the educational section, or the education section, have a look at the videos on sleep and circadian rhythm to find out how you can maximize your sleep quality and your sleep duration. And as for supplementation, so the best supplement to have is whatever you're deficient in that you don't get from your diet. So what I'd recommend is try and address any gaps in your nutrition throughout your diet first. For example, if you're, let's say, low in iron, try and get red meat in instead of using an iron supplement, because sometimes what foods we're consuming also contain maybe other nutrients that can help the absorption of the kind of vitamin or mineral or whatever we're deficient in. And that's going to be like a good practice, because it means you're not wasting your money on supplements every single month. And again, it means you're probably going to get more nutritious foods in your diet, like alongside it. For example, if you have, let's say, red meat to get more iron in, you're also going to get more B12 in your diet, which will play a role in your energy levels. And what I recommend you do is, or most individuals are deficient in vitamin D, so that's a great thing to kind of supplement in. And 1000 to 2000 IU on a daily basis usually helps most individuals get to a sufficient level. Obviously, you could consider getting, like, doing things like getting your blood work done to see what your vitamin D levels are actually like, but the dosage will be dependent on the individual. For example, just because you consume 1000 IU or 2000 IU of vitamin D doesn't mean that's how much you have in your system, if that makes sense. And a few things will make a difference on how much vitamin D you need. There's genetic differences, and your skin color can influence how much you absorb from the sun. So people with like a darker skin color won't typically absorb as much vitamin D from the sun, whereas people with a lighter skin color, who are maybe got like a paler complexion like myself, they'll need a bit more supplementation of vitamin D, or a bit more time spent, or sorry, a bit less time spent out in the sun, or maybe a bit less vitamin D supplementation to reach their levels. Obviously, like, this is me just giving you a rough ballpark. The best way to know what you should supplement in, and if you need to supplement with anything, is getting your blood work done, although costly. Vitamin C can help in terms of immune function. It can help delay the onset and shorten the duration of illnesses. It can also cause digestive distress, so maybe when you're consuming it, consume it with a meal, and be mindful if you're having digestive issues, that could be from vitamin C. But having 6 to 8 grams a day can help in terms of our immune function during periods of being unwell. Next up, we've got zinc. So zinc at 100 milligrams daily can be good for our overall immune function, and I typically supplement with it during periods of me being unwell. And what you want to do is supplement it with a meal to avoid any digestive distress again when consuming it. And just without going on a tangent, some vitamins and minerals are fat soluble, meaning you need fat alongside it to absorb it. So that's why sometimes it's best taking it with a meal, and also taking some things that are anti-inflammatories. So if you're taking any supplement that has anti-inflammatory properties, taking it away from training, because we want inflammation around the training window due to muscle growth being an inflammatory response. So we don't want to blunt that inflammatory response. Next up, a multivitamin. So that's something that I take year round. And then when I am unwell, I double up on the multivitamin I'm currently taking. Obviously, like, you don't want to maybe, what I'm saying is I personally do it, so I want to be careful not to prescribe you to take anything, because sometimes you may, let's say, have enough of a certain maybe vitamin in your blood and in your body, and we might not necessarily want to kind of overdose. So take that with a pinch of salt, but I personally take one year round and double up when unwell. And as for like a greens powder can be a great tool to use, specifically when traveling and out of routine and you've not got the ability to have a lot of fruit and vegetables in your diet for whatever reason. However, I would try and get from whole foods first, because again, it will save your money, and it will mean you can actually get like maybe a bit more absorption from the nutrients you're potentially consuming. But a greens powder could be a good tool, or it could be a good tool to introduce just when you're unwell, especially if, let's say, your hunger is very low. Heat exposure is shown to also have a positive effect on our immune function, so you can consider having like a hot bath or a sauna. The only caveat to maybe having a sauna is if you're unwell, you maybe don't want to go in an environment where you're spreading it to other individuals, but because of the cortisol spiking effects of like hot baths or sauna, it can have a positive effect on our immune function. So cortisol is pretty much the stress hormone. Stress isn't bad. Chronic stress is bad, but having some cortisol is not a bad thing. It can help in terms of energy, alertness, and immune function, and heat exposure can help spike cortisol, which can be a beneficial thing. And as for your overall stress management, so chronic stress worsens the immune function. So not just during periods of being unwell, but year round, it's good to have good techniques to help manage stress. So doing things like deep breathing, especially before meals, because that's going to help get us into a relaxed state to digest our food. Having supplementation in place that helps with stress management, so having things like magnesium, ashwagandha, and things like L-theanine can help in terms of our overall stress management. Having good practices like just going a walk outside in fresh air and nature can help in terms of our overall mental health and state. And just being mindful of your phone use and, let's say, how much caffeine you're consuming on a daily basis. They're all tools to maybe consider when it comes to how well we're managing stress, and just basically like your day-to-day routine. Are you planning out your day? Are you putting yourself in situations where you have unnecessary stress due to leaving things last minute, due to surrounding yourself with individuals who cause you stress? They're all things you can consider to help maximize your immune function or by having good stress management. And again, good stress management is going to play a part in your ability to also have good sleep, having a knock-on effect on your immune function too. As for the training side of things, thank you very much for watching. The rest of this video is available to my online coaching clients in the Coach by Charlie education section. If you're interested in online coaching or simply where else you can find me, feel free to have a look at the links in the description. And lastly, if you did enjoy the video and found value in it, any support is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe.